Development Agency meeting of November 1st, 2022. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present. We're joined electronically by Board Member White. Marcia, can you hear us okay?
I can, and thank you. I just have to quickly say that continuing to test positive and trying to follow the CDC guidelines with COVID. So thanks for this option.
Well, thanks for hanging in there. Okay, first item on our agenda is opening ceremony. I'll defer to Vice Chair Lopez for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Chair. Please rise if you're able and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Please consider joining us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is an opportunity for council members to mention any acknowledgements if you have any this week.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to make a super quick comment. I hope Joe's not mad at me for putting him on the spot, but I want to recognize I was invited to go speak to a group of students at Weber State last week, and I saw one of the students that was in the audience walk into our work session and then coming and sitting here and listening to us, and I think he said this was his first council meeting, so I'm just very happy to see Joe here. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Hope you carb loaded. It's going to be a long one. Any other acknowledgements from other council members?
Oh, sorry, Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the administration and the council staff for helping to have a community meeting at the Marshall White Center, a town hall update with the NAACP, and just talk to community members about where we are with the plan. And I just really appreciate everybody coming. Mark was there to, Mark was there to help answer questions and just explain the process and where we are. And I really appreciate that support. It was a smaller group, but I'm really happy that we did it.
Perfect. Anyone else? Okay, I'll acknowledge none of them are here right now, but the engineering department is working, or division is working on a stormwater project on Taylor Avenue, and we're during trick-or-treating last night, one of the neighbors that's kind of the focus of the project down the way came by and was just glowed about the level of service provided by those employees. So he said that my experience with those employees has been about service. They've just been like, what can we do to help? We're here to fix the problem. They've got an immense amount of water running in toward their house. So just wanted to acknowledge the work those guys are doing and thank them for their selfless service to others. Okay, if there are no other acknowledgements, we'll move on to our first item, which is Native American Heritage Month. We're joined by Charday and Thomas.
Tom was able to make it. Wasn't feeling great. Okay. All right. So I want to thank everybody for being here. So in honor of Native American, Indian, Alaskan Native Heritage Month, I would like to present a handful of our Native American, Indian, and Alaskan Native leaders making a difference right here in Ogden for the council to recognize publicly. This group embodies leadership, compassion, problem solving, and community. So our first honoree we have is Jeanette Jones. She is part of the Ogden School District Title VI Parent Advisory Committee Chair. Janet plays an integral part in the Ogden School District Title VI Parent Advisory Committee. Janet is a true advocate for her Ogden School District Native American Alaska Native students and families. She was voted in as Parent Advisory Committee Chair for the 2022-2023 school year and works diligently to provide meaningful information to our families each month during the Parent Advisory Committee meetings. She not only is an advocate for the Ogden School District students and families, but she is also dedicated to strengthening the voice of our Native American, Alaska Native students and families within the Ogden School District. Jeanette, thank you for your service. I don't know where she is. Is she here? Okay. All right. Our next honoree is Darren Perry. He's a professor at Utah State University. Darren is a former chairman of the Northwestern Band of the Shoshone Nation. He serves on the board of directors for the American West Heritage Center in Wellsville, Utah, the Utah Humanities Board, and the PBS Utah Board of Directors. He attended the University of Utah and Weber State University and received his bachelor's degree in secondary education with an emphasis in history. Darren is the author of The Bear River Massacre, a Shoshone history, and teaches Native American students history at Utah State University. His passion in life are his wife, Melody, 7 children, and 17 grandchildren. His other passion is his tribal family. He wants to make sure that those who have gone before him are not forgotten. Thank you for your service, Darren. And our last honoree is Alex Howley. She is part of the United Way of Northern Utah Community Resources Group. Alex received her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Dartmouth College in 2019, where she majored in anthropology and Native American studies. Since then, she has worked in the community resource at United Way of Northern Utah and has gained experience in nonprofit board leadership, community partnership building, and early childhood education. Alex was recently awarded a Fulbright Fellowship and will pursue a Master's of Arts in Museum and Heritage Conservation at the University of Auckland, Aotearoa in New Zealand in 2023. Alex, thank you also for your service. Thank you, guys.
Thank you also for your service on the Diversity Commission, Commissioner Jones.
Chair Nadolski, do you want to get a picture?
That'd be good. Charday, before you sneak out.
Want to do a picture?
Oh, we have a couple.
Yeah,
Darren?
Alex and Darren.
Actually, Mavis's daughter.
Yeah.
Does Mavis?
Oh.
Do you want your guests to also come? Bring your guests.
Come on, Mavis.
Mavis, come on up. Come on now.
She's used to taking pictures.
I know. Be on the other side. Brandon, he can do it with your phone.
We get the book in.
It's all I'll be very short over here. Thank
There'll be
you.
a huge drop off here on the left side.
Try to find a window.
Yeah.
Yeah. Second part would be like little siblings.
Hang on one second.
I just feel like we're just going to make sure we're not like this.
Okay. Look in here, 1, 2.
Thank you. Congratulations on your work. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Darren.
Swirl this chair around.
Thanks, Darren.
So cool. Sounds like an awesome program.
Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping and business. We've got approval of minutes for the regular meeting of May 10th, 2022. Board Member Chaburka.
Yes, Chair, I've read those. Oh, yeah, you're still the chair. Yes, Chair, I've read those minutes, and they are accurate to my recollection.
Thank you
You know something we don't?
for the yeah. Closed session of May 10th, 2022, Board Member White.
Yes, Chair, I've read those and found them to be accurate. And with that, I will motion that we adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Board
minutes.
Member White, second by Board Member Chaburka to adopt the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those pass. Thanks, you guys. Next item is reports from the administration. We'll bring up Brandon Cooper, our Director of Community Economic Development. We'll be discussing the Union Stock Exchange building at 600 West Exchange Road. I should say rediscussing, since we started this discussion on October 11th.
We actually never got to this proposal, so this would be the first time I think we'd be going through this information, so I appreciate the opportunity again. I'll handle both item number 1 and 2 in the reports from administration, if that's okay. So 2 resolutions before you today for your approval and consideration. One is the Land Transfer and Development Agreement, which stipulates the conveyance of the land, which I'll get into in a minute. And the other is a Participation and Incentive Agreement, which sets forth a financial incentive for the project that I'll explain. A little backstory. Some of you might recognize this picture. In 2013, this is the condition of what's now called the Ogden Business Exchange. This was the Ogden stockyard since about 1917 until sometime in the mid to late 1970s. We started looking at this heavily in 2013 through acquisition and pre-development activities. This was the condition that we found it in. So it was heavily burdened with concrete and with material that was stored there by previous owners. A lot of the stockyard elements were still in place. There was the ramps on the north end up by the river. There were a couple of buildings, albeit unsalvageable, and then there was the exchange building there at the bottom next to the road. Some of our kind of really early on design considerations looked like this. One of the major elements of our design objectives were to center the whole project around the stock exchange building, which is here, and then create a loop that would allow for businesses to not only have street access, but then have river frontage as well. And so that was kind of our design thesis back in the day. This represented that. And then over time that evolved. We had some site planning or some civil planning and some parcel mapping. But that evolved essentially to this. This was the final rendering of what we finally approved in terms of the Ogden Business Exchange. So you'll see that the building is here. In this final format, we had anticipated a building on the corner and then 3 buildings in the back. This was changed a few years ago to be to allow for a single building, which is now Enable Utah. But by and large, the original plan has come to fruition. This shows as a single large building, which is now Ogden's own. This building is currently under construction now as a spec building. And then we have these 2 lots that this is under contract and this is privately owned. And we hope to see construction on that building early next year. This is Envy and this is Brentag and this is where Folsom Engineering is. So overall, the plan did change from the original. You can see some of the differences there, but in general, we were able to meet our objectives with a few minor changes as the market changed and some of the site conditions changed. So we're very happy with that progress.
Brandon, on that engineering building, Folsom Engineering, is Sally Royale still in that?
No. So their lease with the previous owner ended after 5 years. Our incentive with them was for 5 years, and then they ended up consolidating that use in another location. That was an R&D facility. That owner then sold the building to Folsom Engineering.
So where are they located at now?
Back in California.
So we paid for them to be here
for 5 years.
And then they left.
And then they left. And that was largely due to the condition of the building and the landlord that they were working with, unfortunately. So despite a few changes and a few rezones, our attempt to kind of build this entire project around the Exchange building has been successful. And so this is what the site looks like in 2022. If you were to go out there today, you'd actually see some work happening on this site here. One of the key considerations in the design was this trail that leads throughout the site and allows the public to access the river, which wasn't available to the public back in 2013 because it was all private property and inaccessible at the time. So here's just a close-up of what we're talking about in terms of the project. This is the Exchange building, and in the black box is the parcel in which the land transfer and development agreement would consider. So here's just a few references to why we're doing all this. Starting back in 2013, we adopted the Trackline Economic Development Project Area Plan, which looked at the redevelopment of the stockyard specifically. And then in 2019, the Make Ogden Plan was adopted, and that looked both at the downtown and how to connect across the existing rail yard and through the river to West Ogden and the Trackline area. And we engaged this project primarily to support income mobility, which is job creation and opportunity creation. And a lot of our funding was related to those objectives through HUD and EDA. And also placemaking. That river, as I mentioned, was inaccessible prior to our involvement back in 2013. And we have a new bike park back there. There's river access. You can go and fish. There's a picnic area. And just recently, through the Public Works Department, they were able to restore some of the kayaking facilities there at the east side of the project. So a lot has happened over the years, and it's a totally different place. In terms of the proposal tonight, we always like to talk about how these things come about. As you know, we look at 3 different methods in which we engage with folks who are interested in doing work in the city: direct negotiation, public solicitation, and unsolicited proposals. This proposal this evening is of the latter format, the unsolicited proposal. And just for reference, this is kind of how things have shaken out over the last few projects that we've been doing. So the Union Station campus has been the most recent. That was a public solicitation jointly offered between UTA and Ogden City. That was an RFQ. We did a 30th Street project for the second time by the Blair gas station. That was RFP'd twice. And then you can see how some of the other projects have shaken out. So that just gives you an idea of how random some of the things are in terms of our engagement with development partners. I've listed here for you the founders and owners and members of the Q Factor organization. We have 2 folks in the audience with us tonight, Isabeau and Cody, representing the developer. And I believe you met Ellen Rich on the tour, and so wonderful group of folks doing amazing things in Salt Lake and in other parts of the western United States. So what are we talking about? This is the condition of the building as of recent. It's actually erodes day by day. If you look on the backside, it's actually got a significant amount of graffiti. We had to post a police officer at the building over the Halloween weekend. Actually, it's most of the week, given the fact that activity increases over the Halloween weekend, break-ins and graffiti and vandalism, unfortunately. This is the interior. Again, just slowly getting eaten away by Mother Nature. I won't go through all these slides, but they are representative of the work that was done largely by Q Factor, the developer. This is an exercise in that they went through to look at how additional square footage might be added to the building. So the OEX 01 at the top is that exercise of where that extra square footage is going to have the most impact and be the most historically sensitive. And so that is just representative of that. Here's a lot of precedent pictures that they've provided to help us and others understand how new construction can be married to old historic construction and what that juxtaposition looks like and how it's actually desirable and rewarded through the Secretary of Interior standards and programs like the tax credit program. Here's some shots of interiors and how those can be melded together in terms of that new and old. This is the site plan. So what you're looking at here is the new OEX2 building. So this would be entirely new construction on the corner, an interior parking lot that's fed from Exchange Road. And then this darker area here is the Exchange building, with the lighter area being the new addition, which is largely glass. And these are floor plans that describe what that looks like. This is an interesting side shot that shows you the existing first floor grade here, the lobby of the existing building with a basement. You can see how short those ceiling heights are and what kind of dimension you would get from the ground. And then this is the new construction add-on on the back, allowing for additional square footage and pass-through in the building from old to new. If you were standing across the street, maybe at the storage units there or at the roosters, this is what you would see. So very unassuming. We believe it frames the building very well, kind of blends into the background in terms of the historic and the new. Here's another side shot from the sidewalk. Again, making sure that that new addition is stepped back well enough to not detract from the facade of the existing building, and using elements of the existing building, but not recreating them, not mimicking them. This is what it would be if you were looking southeast from the trail. So you see kind of the, again, juxtaposition of the new materials to the old, not replicating, but repeating some of those elements, such as the window sizes, the repeating nature of the size of the windows, the columns, things like that are actually desirable and ideal instead of just replicating the exact materials and features of the existing building. This would be OEX2. This is actually adapted a little bit from this photo based on some input from our planning folks, but that's generally the nature of that building, and that's how the site would look if you were on the light pole looking kind of northwest. So wonderful addition to the Ogden Business Exchange, allowing for, again, new jobs, new development, and most importantly, the preservation of a building that we are unfortunately about to lose due to weather. So here's some night shots. So just to sum up the deal points again, the developer's Q factor or a single purpose entity that would be assigned as typical in these situations. That land area that I showed you was 1.81 acres with the existing building there. So the purchase price would be $195,000, and that is stipulated in the land transfer and development agreement. And then there would be an $800,000 post-performance incentive provided to help with some of the historic preservation elements that are so costly but so important. And that is stipulated in the participation and incentive agreement. Side note is that we have already set aside that $800,000, so we were going to spend that money on our own doing minor things, incremental things like brick repair and roof repair. So we felt it was also necessary in terms of the work that they would be doing. So that's how that came about in terms of trying to finance that gap that exists in the project. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Brandon. Questions for Brandon? Excuse me, other than the design elements that you mentioned in there, you said there was some feedback from the Planning Commission that changed a few minor things. Is there anything in the agreement in the terms of the agreement that changed since last time we heard?
No, everything's exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no questions for Brandon, we'll.
Chair, I don't have any questions for Brandon, but I do want to say a few things,
Sure.
if I may. First off, I do need to make a bit of an apology to the Q Factor folks for my no vote the last time we met about this item. Well, you know, just to be clear, nothing is ever 100% one way or the other. Usually, you know, there's some pluses and there's some minuses on things. And the reason that I gave a no vote the last time was because I was concerned about the height. And I realized that I probably should have made that no vote on the other developments that were preceding this one. At this point, it is entirely appropriate that this height be raised because it is the grand old, the gem of the lot of the parcel, and is, you know, has such significant historical meanings. Anyway, it was, but it has, even at that point, it was never my intention to kill this project. As I have said publicly from the beginning, I thought I was the only one that felt this way, that was a height problem. But let me say this, that a week later, I was able to go to Salt Lake with Brandon and the mayor and a few others, and we were able to tour some of the projects that Q Factor have put together there. And I was able to see firsthand some of the beautiful contrast that was highlighted between the new and the old, and it really does make a stark accentuation, you know, and does highlight the you know, the historical property that's underlying the whole thing, and does frame it very well. And so, who said you can't teach an old dog anything new? I am now a big believer that you know, that is something that can be done, and from we stopped by the stockyards on the way home from that tour to kind of take some of those things that I had learned in the tour, but with Ellen and Cody and her team and their team, and I'm pretty excited about this developer particularly. I think, you know, all developers are not created equal. This one is a step above many, in that they don't cut corners, and they do things that are they're not afraid to spend a little money to get a better product, and I'm pleased about that. Anyway, so I guess the long story short, well, that was a long story and it isn't short, but I have changed my mind about the height and its inappropriateness. I think it's entirely appropriate now, and I am very happy that Q Factor is still with us, and anything I can do to help I'm here for that, because I think that exchange building is worth saving, and I think without them it probably won't be. So,
Okay.
And I'm happy to make a motion if you're ready for that.
How about we accept public input before we make any decisions on that?
Oh, okay. Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is your opportunity to address the board on this item. If you'd like to do so, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Timothy Smith. I'm the founder of Ogden's Own Distillery. Our location is located just west of the Stockyard building. And while not understanding all of the nuances of this project, I'm really excited to see this moving forward. Our architects borrowed design components of the Stockyard building, and personally, upon seeing the renderings of this project, believe this will add tremendous value to the park, and it really excites myself as well as our employees. Our building has an amphitheater that is facing east, facing the livestock building, and one of the most popular questions that people have is, what's going on with that? And seeing these renderings is really it just excites me for the investment that we've made in that area and just continued growth. And basically just want to give that input that we really love this idea.
Thank you, Timothy.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else care to address the board on this item?
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. You can. I'm still accepting guesses as to I had carpal tunnel surgery, and I'm accepting wrong answers. My favorite one thus far is Wolverine implants. So if you feel like you want to weigh in. Thank you so much for being here. And Councilmember Heyer, or are we in a board meeting? Is it board member? Yeah, I never. Sorry. Board member Heyer, I don't think you should apologize at all for voting no, because you made that decision based off of preserving the historic architecture and feeling of Ogden and making sure that we are not Salt Lake City, we are not Denver, that we are Ogden and remain Ogden. So I don't feel that you need to apologize whatsoever because you made that decision based on your love for Ogden. And I like Q Factor. They do beautiful adaptive reuse buildings. They're a fantastic developer, and what I like even more is they were founded by a female engineer, so it's a woman-run company, and I like that perspective. But what I have a problem with is our process as a city, how we got here, how we let this beautiful building, which when it's gone, get to the state that it is in today, where we've got to like, oh gosh, we're going to have somebody do this for us. All right, let's take that because the roof is falling apart and we're going to lose this building if we don't do something. How did we get here? How do we let these buildings get into this state of disrepair? I'm going to guess it has to do with prioritization of budget. And I have a problem with that. And I also have a problem with partners coming in and not doing their fair share for water, for infrastructure, for schools. I understand how TIF works very, very well. And it's a pay it forward gamble that this property is going to cost a lot more. But we also know that our schools are underfunded. We also know that we have water and infrastructure problems, big ones. If you subscribe to the city's email for water alerts, I get one every other day, if not multiple ones in a day. And it's because we have infrastructure that dates back to Godfrey's administration that has not been replaced. And we are duct taping and band-aiding and putting new installation in, but not nearly enough. We are staring down the barrel at a very big water infrastructure problem. So if we're going to invite somebody into our community, when we allow them not to pay, you put the burden of paying on every other citizen that pays their taxes. And sometimes it's a great idea. I wholeheartedly encourage you to approve this project because we are where we are, but I really challenge you to look at your process. And I really challenge Q Factor to look at what it means to be a good steward and how to engage people and the community within the process, because people are upset because they don't know anything about this. They don't know where it's going and haven't had an opportunity to provide feedback or be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers before we get to the hands that are raised online? Okay, seeing no motion, we'll start at the top with Kim Bouchard.
Hey, I haven't commented online before, and I apologize that I cannot be there tonight. I'm at a water conference in California, so like Ms. Castillo, I appreciate the online option. I definitely have communicated with all of you to let you know that I wholeheartedly support this project as well as my business neighbors out there. Oddly enough, the principles of Q Factor I met not through this project at all, but through a dear friend of mine that I work at the airport with, and got to know them and see the quality of what they've done both here and in other states. And this is not a selfish ask of support for this vote. I mean, we're all going to be fine out there, but that Make Ogden plan is strategic, it's important, and this is an episodic event. If we have a thriving, community out there in West Ogden where Ogden Zone, Envy, everything else it spills over into, the West Ogden neighborhoods, and it's also just that core that protects our downtown and provides a beautiful entry into our city. I disagree with Ms. Castillo that how did we get here with the Ogden Exchange building, because there are so many projects like this from many years, and redevelopment is tricky and not easy. And yes, all of those points are valid, but it takes people taking a risk, and there is not a perfect process. I really appreciate Mr. Cooper spelling out the variety of projects. And I don't think we're going, oh, hey, Q Factor wants to invest in our community. I think this is very well thought out. And, you know, so there's that. And that's okay. We can agree to disagree. I also just, you know, from the feedback that I sent you from me and Tim from Ogden Zone and Jeremy Vance and my business partners, you know, there's real money and real investment here, and nothing is a sure thing. Not with redevelopment, not with what we do, not with those incentives like Sierra Royale and those things. I mean, it's not perfect, and it's risky, and I'm asking you to consider these projects from the small business owners that have way more than me, that have their whole lives and their talents and their treasures on the line. And I just would encourage you to support this project because I think it's episodic. It's not me asking for selfish support, and I really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next up is Heath Sato.
Hi there, Heath Sato, Ogden resident. You know, I've been speaking for some time to you about the projects the RDA has approved, and I want to make one thing very clear. I do not have an issue with any of these developers. A good developer finds the best deals, and I'm not even asking you to reject this particular development despite the previous acre of land just being given to the same developer under a different name. My problem's with the process and the primary goal. The process does create great deals for a limited set of developers, but I take issue with how some information is withheld from you to smooth the road to approval. More importantly, though, the primary goal presented in every one of these developments is some distant future tax revenues on the property in the name of removing all things considered by the city to be blight. The thing is, there are other values to consider for a community beyond tax revenue. As things stand, we are growing for the sake of growing into a city more like Denver than Ogden. But what good is this growth if it's not even paying for the added strain on our infrastructure? For the entire 5 years I've owned my current home, fading yellow spray paint has been the solution to a hazardous sidewalk situation there. The average citizen is not seeing benefit from these developer deals. In fact, we've seen our own property taxes increase. With all this development, we've not seen any significant increases in decent paying jobs outside of our own government, and our median household wages have remained fairly stagnant, much lower than surrounding communities. My career started in an old warehouse with other artist friends. You might have considered that a blighted area, but rent was cheap, and that's what emerging artists need to create. I was only able to eventually become an artist that creates monumental sculptures installed all over the world because I got my start in an affordable old warehouse. We started that art center with my friends 30 years ago in North Carolina. It's still going strong and remains affordable despite all the development around it. Other artists here are looking for the same opportunities for their own space, like Ballet Folklorico Ek. They teach traditional Hispanic cultural dance to at-risk kids like those who attend Youth Impact. And there are many others like them that need a creative space and cannot afford it. The city created an arts district that very few artists can afford because none of us can compete with a city that buys up every property that might have potential. As a result, the remaining properties all cost over $1 million for a small piece of land and a building fit only to be torn down. We cannot compete with big developers that are literally being paid $1 million to take over these properties that we taxpayers paid for. It's not fair to the people that actually live here and invest their lives in this place, even though we might not generate as much tax revenue as big development. I'm asking you to please consider that future tax revenues are not always the best and only path to create a value for a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands raised, back to the board for comment or discussion.
Chair, if you're ready for motion, I'd be happy to make that.
Can I make, if there's anybody else want to make a comment before we move to action?
I was just going to make a quick comment, and I apologize that I wasn't here the first time this item was on the agenda. I actually was on a work trip in Chicago, and I spent that whole week in the old post office in Chicago, if you've been there before. And it was such an inspiration to me. I mean, I loved this project design before that trip, but then when I spent all that time in that space, and you all know how much I love historic buildings to begin with, it just made me really think about how great this space will be when it's actually getting utilized, because right now it's, you know, it's just a, you know, really sad situation, as we've all kind of stated. And I definitely agree about the process, and I loved your suggestion, Chair, of thinking about the historic properties in particular, about how we may think about moving forward and preserving, you know, what they are, and thinking about the solicitation process a little bit different for those particular properties too. So I just want to make that comment that, you know, if you get a chance when you're in Chicago, check out that post office building, because it's amazing. It's got convention rooms, it's got businesses, Uber's there, it has, you know, places to eat, and it has places where people can just rent out the spaces for events or for gatherings for their companies. Yeah. It's really incredible. So I'm really excited to see what happens with this one.
Good deal. Thanks. Anybody else? So I'll just make a couple of comments. I wasn't invited to participate in a tour. I wasn't invited to meet with the developers. But I did vote no last time that we heard this item. And I just want to clarify, I didn't vote no because I have any concerns with Q Factor, the developer. I have zero concerns with them. I also don't think that our staff or anybody involved in the project has done anything nefarious. I think my comments have probably more context and history than most people are privy to, just because they're not here every single Tuesday and working through every single issue. But just as I learned tonight that Celi Royale is no longer with us after we've paid them a lot of money to incentivize them to locate into this project area, I just have concerns about the money that we've put towards this project area beyond just this specific project, but within this exchange zone. And this particular development area has taught me a lot of lessons. I think we need to be giving even more scrutiny than we have to the money that we're giving out, because I was just concerned with my vote, and I'm still concerned today with what we've gotten for the money that we've put out so far. And that has nothing to do with Q Factor, nothing to do with the process that led us to tonight. So I just wanted to clarify that. I did also mention in my vote that I am really worried about the Stockyard building, the Exchange building. It's a piece of history. It's a treasure for this community, and I genuinely worry about it. I have not been on a tour to view the developments that Q Factor has done, but I have been down to look at the condition of the property, and it's really bad. And I absolutely believe that this is our last opportunity to save it. So with that, I'll entertain action or a motion.
Thank you, Chair. Concerning proposed resolution 2022-10, I would make a motion to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Ritchie to adopt proposed resolution 2022-10. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Board Member Chaburka?
Aye.
Board Member Heyer?
Aye.
Board Member Ritchie?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
Aye. That passes.
Chair, I'd make a motion then also that we adopt resolution 2022-11.
Second.
A motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Blair to adopt proposed resolution 2022-11. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Chaburka?
Aye.
Board Member Heyer?
Aye.
Board Member Ritchie?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Board Member Blair?
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Aye.
Chair Nadolski?
Aye. That passes. Next item on our agenda is unfinished business. This is the budget amendment related to the items we just discussed. As a point of clarification for procedure, this is unfinished business which by our rules is listed after reports from administration. That's why it's a little out of order, but this is the item that we began action on in our last meeting on October 11th that we are returning to today for unfinished business. We'll invite up Lisa Stout, our comptroller, to present to us on this.
Thank you, board members. This will put the funding in place to complete the LT8DA and the reimbursement agreements that you just voted on. The action before you is to appropriate a budget transfer from the city. Funds were set aside in the amount of $845,000 in fiscal year 21 to do some saving efforts on the exchange building and fund the purchase price. In the slideshow that Brandon Cooper had, he showed the purchase price of $195,000. We're putting the funding for the purchase price at $200,000. That would be the $195,000 plus some closing costs if as needed. The rest of the money would go towards the developer reimbursement and site cleanup in the amount of $40,000. Part of this agreement, the city is purchasing the property for $195,000, and then Q Factor, the developer, is purchasing the property from the RDA. So that sales price revenue will also come into this agreement to fund the full $800,000. Any questions?
Questions for Lisa? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Comments or questions from the council? If none, we can entertain action.
Chair, I'd make a motion to adopt proposed resolution 2022-9, amending the budget for fiscal year.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Ritchie, seconded by Board Member Chaburka to adopt proposed resolution 2022-9, which amends the budget for the fiscal year 2022-23. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Heyer.
Aye.
Board Member Ritchie.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Board Member Chaburka.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes.
Chair, if I might make a clarification,
Sure.
of clarification. While I do feel like an apology is appropriate, I don't apologize for my vote last time. I do want to apologize to Q Factor for, I really fear that they felt like I was disparaging them in some way, and that was never the intent, and that's what the apology was for. And I do want to give thanks to them for having interest in our community, as well as Kim Bouchard and those that have developed down in that area that have really helped Ogden to continue to grow. Kim sent us an email today that I totally agree with, that my hat is off to people who will, go out on a limb and do some things to help the city, and she has been one of those. So wanted to thank her and Q Factor as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll just say that I'm happy to vote on behalf of that building. I think we've taken an important step. It needs to happen. I have full faith and confidence in Q Factor to get it done, and all I'm asking for is for this council and RDA to have increased scrutiny over the requests that we get, so that we make sure that we're getting what we are paying for. And prior to Q Factor's involvement, that wasn't quite the case. So we've had other developers come into this area. We've incentivized them. They haven't performed. They've been let off the hook. We're left hanging, carrying the bag. And we've incentivized companies to come to the area. We paid them. They took the money and then they left. And so I know that development's never perfect. I know that there's always some risk involved. I'm just asking that we have additional scrutiny as we move forward, because we've got projects before us that just require that. And that's just our responsibility and our job. So no hard feelings with Q Factor. I know nothing about you before now. But I hope and pray that for success for the project because this community needs it. So thank you. Okay. Next item on our agenda is public comments. This is your opportunity to address the board regarding concerns or ideas on any topic. Please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Chair, I was just wondering, should we mention that we don't have public comment on the next meeting?
That would be
just so
good.
people are aware.
Mm-hmm. This is their only chance.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
I just noticed myself.
So we are, just for clarification, we do have a city council meeting following this RDA meeting, at which point there is not any public comment. Thank you. I had connected that. Thanks. Sorry.
No, I just noticed.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing it out to me. I didn't realize it either. So, okay, so if you care to address the board on any topic, now's your opportunity.
Is this for the RDA meeting or for the council meeting?
You can do
It's probably a good opportunity for both, to be honest with you. Technically, it's the RDA, but you can address us on any topic. So, yeah.
Anyway, I'm Teresa Holmes. I've been at Union Station a long time. Teddy Griffin started these museums in 1978. All the docents and everybody over the years and Ogden City people have donated to the museums, donated their time, and done a lot for the museums, you know. And then you guys sit there and say, oh, we're taking out the museums. I don't think so. I'm pissed off. Excuse my French.
Ms. Holmes, please maintain decorum
really,
in your language. Thank
trying to control myself. I just feel bad. Every time I'm been in there, I've had to sign non-disclosures. I've had my 7,000 volunteer hours threatened to be taken away, you know, just because I spoke up and said the museums belong in Union Station. That's their home, you know. And most of the people in Ogden, we've been bringing our families and friends to the station to see the museums for generations. You know, I'm taking kids through that parents went through. And here's another thing. You know the Morse Fairbanks balance scale in there? Well, it's in the, off the thing from the, Kennecott copper mine caboose. Anyway, it's been there since 1888. It survived the fire of the predecessor building in 1923. And when they built this new building, the basements and everything were built. It was built over the 1880s part. So in that room alone, we have the original schedule that was in our lobby. We had over 130 trains a day at times. And this was the busiest railroad hub west of the Mississippi for over 100 years. And our history goes to the trains, the Browning guns, and the Browning cars that they donated to the museums. And also we have a Western heritage. And what are we going to throw that away for? You guys say you're building another museum? I don't see one. We like the station. We were there first, you know. And it breaks my heart to think of all the docents that's passed over the years. And they said, Teresa, please help us keep the station going. And I promised that I would, you know. And Lee Whitten has more hours than I do, and they locked him out of his library. That's kind of a crappy thing they did to him. You know, they rekeyed the place and locked him out after 22 years and 7,600 volunteer hours, and not even a thank you. You know, we deserve better than that. The docents there are treated like we're second class. You can't ask questions and get a straight answer, you know. I think you guys better slow down on this project or we're going to lose everything. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else care to address the board?
Hi, I'm Steve Jones, and I live at 1090 East, 4600 South. I've been involved with Union Station ever since I moved to Ogden, and you know, you felt the emotion coming from Teresa in her discussion. There needs to be a solid plan that documents what's there, that shows what we're going to keep, that shows what we're going to enhance, that shows what's going to change. And it's just simply not there. Make Ogden has some very, very good points in it, but it's not in the level of detail that you can take and say, let's go execute this. So a number of interested citizens got together. We established a Facebook page and started soliciting input from the community. Earlier today, I sent an electronic document in that gives you guys the address of that Facebook page. What I would request of you is that you spend time on that, ask questions, basically do your homework, and let's go into this redevelopment project with open eyes. Make sure that we know what we're getting out the other side, make sure that we know what we're losing, and go into it together, because that's the only way we're going to win. The kinds of our artifacts that we have at Union Station are the kinds of things that once they are gone, you don't reproduce them. They don't come back. And from what I understand, some of the displays are already being dismantled. The Maintenance Away exhibit has been closed for quite some time. And, there's no real explanation of what's going on there. So I deplore you, please help us. We want to save that gem at the head of 25th Street. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to address the board?
This is public comments
Yeah.
for the whole night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come on up, Steve.
Good evening, council and mayor. I'm finally not in the soccer season here, so I'm going to have some Tuesday nights open. I plan to be here. It's probably going to start getting a little repetitive up here. I'm here once again to implore you to take action. Unite your voice, Ogden council and the mayor. Unite your voice and action to preserve open use recreation field space at 3 locations that I presented during the October 4th council meeting. I'm asking you to unite, ensuring our community and our children have green space to play sports safely. In a meeting earlier this year, Ogden City shared that the currently available field space has reached its scheduling capacity. This means that new and current sport teams could be restricted in access to fields in our city. There is good news. There are 3 properties being sold by Ogden School District. 2 of the 3 properties are already attached to existing city parks. The properties are known as Grandview Elementary, Lynn Elementary, and the North Jackson site. However, we must act quickly as there are less than 52 days left for us as the city or county, as qualified entities per the Utah State statute, to secure these properties for community parks. If they are not secured by Ogden City for open green space, they could be sold to private developers. Why is this important to use these properties for open space? This will help keep all team sports accessible and affordable for every member of our community. This will help us keep up with housing expansion with usable parks and recreational field space. This will help support growing demand for youth and adult team sports growing in our community. And we can develop land once, or we can keep these parks as open space forever. Now, we need your help. We can't do it alone, right? And I'm sure I've got 2 hats that I wear, right? I'm also a land guy, a real estate guy, but I'm also a volunteer who gives back to our community at a cost to a lot of us that are volunteers. And when we're told that we're out of space to schedule our kids to play sport, that's not just a soccer problem or a flag football problem or a t-ball and a softball, a pickleball problem. That's a community-wide problem. I sent somebody in here a couple weeks ago. They were kind of come in and talk science and how the track in Utah and these park locations and our deficiency in our community. But he was a little shy and left the meeting without providing that science and additional health knowledge to you. And I'd like to ask if there's a time appropriate that you guys can gather these additional facts. And again, we're under a time clock here.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve. We'll listen to facts, and sounds like we'll have opportunities every Tuesday now. But hey, hang tight. I got some feedback I want to share with that on that too. I just want to get through everyone else first. Next is Heath Sato.
Hi there, Heath Sato, Ogden resident. As we just discussed, how we now have to spend $1 million to get a developer to fix up a building we taxpayers owned and allowed to fall apart under our ownership, we are now allowing Union Station exhibits to be dismantled in the name of future development. We cannot allow the museum to be dismantled and have our artifacts decay in the hopes of someday having a new museum that there's no budget for, no plans, not even a solid promise. My major thing I kept going back about the historic brown ice cream building that you guys said was a good historic building worth saving. A full year now after you sold it for a song, there's been no work done on that building. It continues to decay. Where's the pressure to start reversing that decay in a timely fashion? We gave away entire blocks of our city to the same Salt Lake developer, and they've sat there for years now growing weeds. I don't see the value in spending so many tax dollars on land that we give away, and they just sit there. Nothing's happening. Again, I don't have an issue with any of these developers. I think they're making very smart choices in taking these deals. And tonight, I love the design of the Q Factor project. I think it's going to be awesome. But I think we need a little more accountability for how these deals are being set up and doled out. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, this gentleman was making his way up, and I kind of went out of order there. Sorry about that.
My name is Robert Humiston. I'm a property owner in Ogden. First, I want to say I've never been here before. This is my first time at a meeting. I've only been an owner for a couple of years, but I've lived in the area for 50 years or more. I agree with everything that's been said about the Union Station. If you really want to save all this historic artifacts that we have, where are the plans to build the museum first? And then move the items if you need to use the Ogden Station space for something else. I don't know what visibility has been out there for people like me who don't come to these meetings. I don't know what transparency this project has seen, but it seems like what I've heard, and a lot of it's on social media, is that there's a lot of people opposed to this. And I don't know how this input is getting through and evaluated, or is it just kind of being shoved aside because we want to follow some plan we have. One other thought I had is, the dinosaur park, it is advertised. It's a destination for a lot of people. Why not promote what we have in the Union Station? Why not build it up? This could be basically a world-class train museum with other museums. Why not promote it and build it up like you're doing with this Stockyard Exchange building? There's, like I say, a lot of social media rhetoric out there which seems to think this is just being railroaded through. Excuse the pun, but I have been in the museums and they're beautiful. There's a lot of history there. I think this could bring so much economic impact to hotels, restaurants in the area if this was really built up as a destination. So I would urge the council to please consider that option. I don't know if you've done any consulting studies on what this is going to do, but are there other options? Why not promote it? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
In case there's anyone else that wants to speak about the Union Station, please enlighten me on what this and it and the project are that are. I have no idea. I'll admit I'm not a social media
You'll have
person.
to follow the social media page.
Yeah, I'll have to jump off the hunting
I've
and
been
fishing
getting
pages.
lots of emails and texts, so if you're not, then everybody please also encounter all the rest of the council members too.
Sorry, come on up.
I was born and raised in Ogden. My parents were born and raised here. My kids were born and raised here. My grandkids are born and raised here. We all love the museum at the Union Station. And just to see that building, I can't even imagine if you changed the front of it. That's Ogden to me, is the Union Station looking down 25th Street. And my kids all enjoyed the museums. My grandkids enjoyed the museums. My mom particularly enjoyed the museum. We'd go to lunch at Union Station, and then we'd go and visit the museums, and she'd tell history. And my whole family history I learned through those museums. And I want to be an advocate for saving them as they are, and not in the future where it might not happen. You know, and I hate to see just a business come in and take all that land over and change it all. I'm all for progress in this Q factor. It seems great for the, you know, what you're planning there. If something like that would come in maybe and make it better, not replace it. That's all I'm asking. Thank you. Thanks. I said I'm no speaker.
Yep. Okay, anybody else?
Hasn't she been?
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. Board member White, I'm sorry you're home and not well and caught COVID. That's why I still wear a mask. What everything was said and what's being said on the community Facebook page is Cool Hand Luke reference. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And the Make Ogden plan started in 2019, and we spent a lot of money for it, and it's a good plan. I don't agree with 100% of it, but generally speaking, it is a vision, and it's moving in a direction, and we have problems with citizens who don't come here every single week like I do, like you do. And they don't know what's going on, and there are artifacts being taken out of the museum, and that, oh, we have plans, and the Make Ogden plan says that we're going to have this wonderful 20,000 square foot museum, no timeline, no deliverables, no nothing. And was mentioned before, I don't know if any of you have done, well, you have retail, board member Blair. You have to be consistent with your hours to develop people. You can't just like one day not do it. One day you're there for 2 to 4, and the next day you're there from 7 to 8, or you wouldn't sell any gas. You have to have consistency, and that's what we're missing with what's happening with Union Station is consistency, a failure to communicate to residents and consistency. We can do better, and I challenge you to do so. Speaking of doing better, I was listening to the work session, and I was absolutely shocked and amazed not to hear Weber State University or Jennifer Bodine brought up at all when you were talking about recycling. We also don't know, I saw the pictures of what happened with recycled earth, but there was no documentation as to what it was. You know, Lotus Development does beautiful projects, and there was a windstorm a couple weeks ago at the Walmart site. River was littered with all sorts of stuff from that building. They fixed it because they didn't plan on it. It was an accident. I want to know, is that what's happening? Was it a once-in-a-lifetime thing? Is it repeated? We don't know. Weber State University is having a sustainability summit from March 23rd to 24th in 2023. The greatest minds in Utah and other places talking about sustainability. Maybe we should ask them what we would do and what we should do about our recycling program. And I'd also like to call to your attention that since 2020, there have been not one, not two, not three, but 5 companies that make a fully electric garbage truck. The most prominent one is Mack Truck, the LR8. Costs $500,000, saves $40,000 a year in fuel cost, and you can lease them. You don't have to buy them. Cities like New York, Cary, North Carolina, Hoboken, New Jersey, Mobile, Alabama, Des Moines, Iowa, Hoboken, New Jersey, and our neighbors, Boise, Idaho, use these trucks. Maybe we should talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no other movement. Got comments from the executive director.
Sure, I'd echo a lot of the comments that have been said, and I appreciate the people that have taken the time in the last 2 weeks to look at Q Factor and what's going on down there. Some comments have been made about Union Station and our history and everything else. I think the vote that was made unanimously and that everybody put so much time and energy into reflects that we are invested into our history. And any comments or Facebook posts or anything else that we're going to do anything with the museums at Union Station or anything else is absolutely false. So if I can clear that up here, those are world-class pieces that we want to take care of. We will absolutely be stewards for when we're 100% into. So if I can be any more direct, I don't know how to. But I want to thank you all for the time and diligence in the last couple of weeks to look at what was happening at the Exchange Building and what a unique asset that is. I want to thank the neighbors that have come to speak about that building and that project down there. The redevelopment is much more difficult than development. And it is dynamic and it changes and nothing's ever exactly the same every time. And so I appreciate our economic development department and everybody else that keeps working on this and does some of the hard work. Nobody else is doing this kind of work to keep these historic assets in our community and to help continue to tell our story. And so I'm proud of the work that's been done there. I have no qualms at all. I've been unabashed by the fact that I think we need to preserve and protect these things. And what we're doing is not exactly is what other places are doing, but it's what we can do with the resources we have available to us. And so I really do appreciate your diligence and everybody's willingness to look into this and to listen to the neighbors for some of these developments and everything else. I think that was a really wise decision that you made. I'm proud of our history. I'm proud of our community. And these types of decisions help us expand that and continue to grow it and keeps us all, I think, collectively really proud. If I heard anything about it, a lot of the comments that were said, we're really proud of where we grew up and what's going on and the things that are happening here. And I don't disagree with any of the votes that have been made. And some of the comments we might disagree on how they get done sometimes, but I think the commitment from our group and from you all and from our community is all on the same page. We might miss on a degree or two as we go through it, but I think collectively we all feel the same sense of urgency to protect and to own what we have. And you need to know that we feel that as well. And I think that's reflective in the vote you guys made today after a couple of weeks of research with Q Factor and everything else. So I appreciate that. And I thank everybody for their comments and for being willing to show up and share their opinions.
Thank you. Comments from board members?
You going? We can just go down that. Yeah, well, I appreciate your comments, Mayor, because I mean, that's basically what I've been hearing. I mean, for weeks and weeks, Teresa's been reaching out, concerned about the state of the museum. And then the Facebook group started, and I've been monitoring that conversation. One challenge I have, I think, and I agree, I want to be much more transparent. I mean, as transparent as we can be. Sometimes you can't share all details all the time about every element of a project. But I'm definitely an advocate for open communication between people. I think one challenge I'm finding in this situation is that sometimes people don't want to have a conversation or a dialogue they want to make some people out to be really bad people because they have an opposite opinion or because there's other ideas. And that's something I just can't tolerate. So I'm happy to stay part of the conversation and help to provide a public forum for people to talk about the issues. But I really think it's detrimental to our community to make us out to be against one another when we're all working so hard in these forums and many others to improve our community the best way possible. So I just urge everybody to trust that people do have good intentions when we're involved in this. I mean, we get paid a little bit for this, right? But we're in it for the right reasons, I believe, and I just hope that you give us the benefit of doubt when you hear things that seem a little bit outrageous.
Thanks for those comments, Angela. That's good.
That's my comment. Thanks, Angela. Appreciate
awesome.
that.
I know.
And you can reach out to more than one council member.
I just, yeah.
You guys can have comments.
Thanks.
I have some comments, Chair. So I just wanted to follow up a couple weeks ago when Mr. Van Wagner came the first time to speak. I asked the administration, the mayor wasn't here, but I asked Mr. Johnson about the plans for these properties from the Ogden School District. So I'm not sure if you might have an idea or any comments on what the plan might be. I'm just curious. I think you asked us to wait 2 weeks.
We've been working on it. We still have some time left. We have 90 days from when the school district alerted us. We're formatting kind of what we're going to come recommend to you. I think, and Janine can probably tell you, but I think there's a time on your schedule in November when we'll be talking about it. But yeah, we're working on it right now. I don't know that it's ready for public yet.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I just want to say that I personally, I'm very interested in, I'm just a supporter of, preserving more space that we can use for recreation in our community. And I understand if there are plans for purchasing those properties and building some kind of housing, I also understand that's a huge need in our community. And I'm in support of that as well. But I think hopefully we can find some balance. So thank you. I appreciate your comments. I also wanted to, just to make sure for the record, there was a comment made about TIF today and about taking away from schools and education. And if I remember correctly, I just want to double check, make sure I'm not mistaken. Our other entities have to sign on and have to agree when we go into do this TIF. So in this case, the school district is our partner in these projects. Is that correct?
As well as the county.
As well as the county, right?
Yep. All the major entities are a partner in this, and they understand part of what TIF does is that they understand if you don't put some of that on hold for a little bit so you can put in infrastructure and do a lot of the redevelopment work, then it just won't happen. It'll be like the stockyards was, that it sat fallow for 40, 50 years. We had RDAs and other tools down there, and they just never came together. So this is a unique opportunity for us. And the school district and the county understand that we all need to sacrifice a little bit to redevelop some of these distressed areas. Yeah. And if we're not willing to do that collectively, then they just won't happen. And that's the whole point of that tool.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to set that for the record. I think, I believe because the school district is our partner, is signing on to tax increment financing for these developments, somehow suggesting that we're robbing education. To me, it's probably wrong. So thank you.
I agree 100% with that.
Thank you for that.
And that's why they vote on it.
Thank you.
They vote to approve it.
Thank you, Mayor, for the clarification. And then the last comment I have, I just want to give a huge shout out to the police department. because there was an issue happening somewhere around my neighborhood, and the police department just was incredibly amazing in dealing with a home where apparently there was a lot of drug use and all kinds of violations. I think they found meth traces in this home, and the police were just amazingly professional and active. So I just want to please tell them thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And then you know, my heart is telling me to also thank you, Mayor, and your administration for everything you do, because I know that people like to treat you as a piñata, and we don't see eye to eye all the time. We know that, but I really appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you.
Thanks, and I'll pass it along to the police department. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks.
Chair, if I could just really quickly say one thing, and it's just a follow-up to what Councilmember Lopez was saying, and I think one of the things that I guess I want to suggest that we do work with our partners on both the county and the school district. Other counties are not as lucky, or other cities are not as lucky. Salt Lake City has an issue with their school district does not want to play with them, if you will, because they have a lot of developable land that they don't have to redevelop. And so I think from our standpoint, our school district gets it, our county gets it, that we actually do have redevelopment areas where we are doing traditional redevelopment. And so I want to put a big plug into our redevelopment agency, because I do think that our partners do get it, and that they do get the fact that if we do not develop this land, then it will sit idle like it's been sitting for years and years and years, and basically getting no value out of property values or anything like that from taxing. And so if we develop this land and get taxes, then it lifts all boats. And I think, I just wanted to say that, because I think we forget that we're not quite there yet. And it's really frustrating sometimes to sit up there and say, yes, we want to give increment away, but we're just not quite there yet. And I think our RDA and our staff does a great job of looking at all of that. So
Thanks, Marcia. Anybody else? Okay, I'll take my turn. Sorry. I think I dated myself when I said I wasn't watching the social media on this, but it was true. For matters of self-preservation and peace of mind, spirit, and my own heart, I often avoid some of the toxicity that takes place on social media, frankly. I do find myself perusing it because I like to hunt and fish, and I see cool pictures of wildlife and everything. But I really want to highlight the comments that Angela made. And it's things that we've said here before, but we've got a number of people here that are frustrated. I know that we're politicians, and that politicians in today's world are like terrible people automatically. But I've got disagreements with every one of these people around this dais, but I also love every one of them. I believe that they're here for the right reasons. I believe that they're here doing the best thing they can, and that they're doing the right thing for the right reasons, their own reasons that they believe is right. We've all been raised differently. We all have different life experience. So what is right to me might not be right to the next, but it doesn't make it right for us to demonize everybody and each other. And that goes for the community too. You have your right? And you see something that you think is wrong. It doesn't make it right for us to demonize you for sharing that with us. So I hope that we collectively as a community and as a chambers that will share and offer one another some grace when it comes to these topics, because these things are not as easy as people often think they are. We just don't have a huge checkbook to just write checks to restore everything all at once. But like the mayor said, tonight's vote was case in point. The reason I changed my vote is because I voted on the side of the history in that building. This council wants to save this history, so does this administration, and we're going to. It's going to take time. So I'm not committing to read social media moving forward, because it hurts me sometimes, but it's doing me mostly some good. But I just wanted to plant that notion for all of us before we leave tonight. Secondly, to Steve Van Wagner's comments about open space and field space, you know, you and I share our passion for kids and youth in sports. I mean, I know what your why is, and because I share it. The reason I'm here is that I endure everything else on some days so that I can work on kids' sports. I love it. And so when you talk about open space for kids, playable space for kids, I listen. I also know that when I first started in this role, one of the first things that me and Councilmember Lopez were on was an open space and parks master plan. And in that plan, we went through and did a really detailed deep dive about every freaking foot of open space that we have. And we compared it to other communities, and we looked at their population versus ours and the amount of acres as a ratio to population. And we're doing pretty well with the amount of open space that we have. There's a difference between open space and playable space. And I think we have open space that could become playable space. And I think that this might be one tool that we could help do that. But I just want you to know that I hear the need, and I like the need and the wish and the want. I just know, and so do they, that there's more than one way to accomplish it. So I don't know what Mark was alluding to, maybe teeing something up for us to consider. That's how the system works for us. They're kind of chewing a bunch of stuff up, and they'll come up with a recommendation for us to consider. Until then, I would like to offer you some grace to go through that. I'd also like to offer you some grace by telling you where I stand. And I just think there's a lot of different ways that we can accomplish what we all want. We want space for our kids to play. There needs to be a way to pay for it. You know, we can't just be giving away space and use of space to every club that's out there, because there's a bunch. So we've got to find a way to pay for it. So that's where I'm at on that. I'm not a no, I'm not a silent on it. And then finally, this is the big one. So this is a little untraditional, but the council's asked me to share something with you guys because we're anxious to share it with you. Well, I think the administration is too. But the way that this works is the administration makes proposals to us. We vet those proposals. We also take those proposals and we put it before the community for your feedback, and we consider that feedback as we make our decisions. And we've got a big one coming, and we want to introduce it tonight for the sake of transparency and communication. I think we've talked about that tonight, that communication is lacking, simple communication. So we're not going to hide anything. I just want to share it, and here it goes. So over the next couple of months, the administration is going to be presenting plans that are going to implement elements of the Make Ogden Master Plan that we've heard discussed tonight. The one block development, which is sat empty, people are frustrated. There's a proposal coming, and it's big because it's a big piece of land. The development would redevelop the former Wonder Block factory at 26th Street and Grant Avenue. What's being proposed and what you'll learn more about over the coming months is a proposed mixed-use development with housing, retail, office, and hotel space. If the RDA approves it, the RDA and the developer, who is in this case JF Wonder Block Partners, would form a public and private partnership to complete the project. In addition, the administration is also working on a proposal for a parking management system that would include 2 parking structures, metering equipment, and implementation of other parking management tools. So funding for these projects, the administration is working on a proposal that would request that the council and RDA, also acting as the municipal building authority, would authorize the issuance of bonds. So the request is for tax increment and sales tax bonds, somewhere in the amount of not to exceed around $75 million. It's a lot of money. But they're also going to propose a plan for how to pay for it. So as our part in this project, the City Council will be hosting a fact-finding session and an open house on Tuesday, the 15th of November. We'll be here in the council chambers. It'll be at 4 p.m. Information on this proposal is going to be presented for the Wonder Block development, including the parking management system and the bond financing and the proposals before us. We're not going to rush through anything. Like I said, this is going to take a couple months. But the transparency and the communication starts tonight. An open house will follow that to allow residents to interact with our city staff, council members, and then to discuss the proposal before us and to ask any questions that you wish. If we need to, the council is prepared to offer another open house so that we can make sure we get clear on our communication and our feedback from you guys. But we are set to consider a public hearing for the issuance of bonds sometime around January, hopefully around January 10th, 2023. Additional information will be posted on the council's social media channels moving forward. And as always, you can contact us individually, but not just Councilmember Chiburka. You can contact all of us.
Yeah, I know the Wonder Block is in my district, but you all can talk about it too. Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to look at social media for this one. But if you want to email the council on this or anything else, you can email citycouncil@ogdencity.com and every one of us will get it. Take a little burden off Angela. Or you can leave us a voice message at 801-629-8158. And that's all I have to share on that project. There are still details to come, but this is going to be a long process, and the administration is going to share with us their proposal and their ideas. We're going to take it to heart. We're going to take it to you. We're going to get your feedback, and then we're going to make decisions moving forward that we think are best for the community. Okay? Anything else from any board members?
Can I just make a follow-up comment? I just want to say you are welcome to reach out to me. I was really teasing. I've already been out visiting with some of the business owners on 25th Street and up in the Nine Rails District to talk about this particular issue. So I'm happy to talk with anybody. I was really teasing too.
I was too. Sorry. Okay. Let me get my glasses back on again. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from the RDA meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Chiburka to adjourn the RDA meeting. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned for our RDA meeting, and we'll allow the recorder to reset for council meeting.
Yeah. I just got my seat warm. I'm not leaving.
I hope we didn't scare Joe.
To the November 1st, 2022 City Council meeting. The roll call reflected all City Council members are present. Sorry, let the roll call reflect that all City Council members are present, including Council Member White, who is joining us electronically. Council Member White, can you say hi?
Hey there.
Thank you. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes, starting with the regular meeting of April 19th, 2022. Council Member Blair.
Yeah, I reviewed those minutes, and I couldn't find anywhere in there where Councilmember Chaburka wished me happy birthday that day. But other than that, the minutes were accurate and reflected the content of that meeting.
We'll
But
take that up.
She did wish me a happy birthday that night.
We'll take that up with the recorder. Okay, regular meeting of May 3rd, 2022, Councilmember Heyer.
Yes, Chair, I've reviewed those and found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection.
Thank you.
Nothing missing that I noticed.
Regular meeting of May 17th, 2022, Councilmember Ritchie.
Yes, Chair, I've reviewed those minutes and found them to be accurate and make a motion to adopt the minutes or approval of the minutes.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt the minutes as presented. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thanks for reading those. Next up is common consent. We've got some guidelines we discussed in the work session on the Neighbor Up Grant, appointments and reappointments to the Landmarks Commission, and appointments to the Natural Resource and Sustainability Stewardship Committee.
Chair, I would make a motion that we approve the common consent agenda with the items listed in there in the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to adopt the items of common consent. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes, and thank you to those that are.
Is anybody here? I don't know if anybody's here.
Chair,
yeah.
Regarding that, we still struggle to get appointments broader in our community, and that kind of occurs to me that we may be better invent a new process somehow. And I don't know how that might work, but I'm open to dialogue about how we might do that better to make sure that those things happen in a broader way.
If you figure out a way, please let us know. I think I've run into the same issue with we've been looking for some engagement with Untamed too, and struggle to make sure we may have broad participation around the community. So if there is an answer to that, I would love to hear it, because I totally agree. I think it's real.
It's going to take a little brainstorming, and I'm open for it.
Okay, is Brian Scaddy, Mary Willis McMillan, Sue Wilkerson, Judy Mitchell, James Wilson, or Thomas Moore here? Okay, they've all been appointed to the Landmarks Commission or reappointed. And how about Erica McDonald or Taylor Lee? Okay, they are now appointed to the Natural Resource and Sustainability Stewardship Committee. So thank you to those folks who have volunteered to help. Next item on our agenda is public hearing for fiscal year 2022-2023 budget amendment regarding the Union Stock Exchange building and some miscellaneous grants as well. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. The budget action before you for consideration this evening is to appropriate or to reappropriate money that was initially funded to the CIP for the exchange building. Initially, when this project was contemplated, the city doesn't currently own the building. It was anticipated to be a CIP project where the city would purchase the building and then do some saving efforts on it. And when the RDA stepped in to work out a development agreement, we're asking that these funds be transferred to the redevelopment agency to help fund that agreement. Additionally, we have a few new grants we'd like to ask the City Council to fund. One is a grant related to the homelessness advocates. We currently have funding for 2 positions. That's done through the McCady Foundation. And the two vehicles would fund the purchase of 2 vehicles, including the equipment inside the vehicles. That additional money is a total of $88,200. We're also asking for an appropriation in the fleet fund. Once the miscellaneous grant fund purchases the vehicles, or excuse me, the fleet fund purchases the vehicles, they will ask for reimbursement through the grant. So it's just the way government and accounting works, or we do our books. We're also asking for an appropriation of $14,500. It's a UCJJ grant from the state of Utah. It's equipment for police, including some handheld LiDAR and some BOLO wraps. And we're asking for an appropriation of $4,000 for some things at the Golden Hour Center. These were funded through an Easy Ramp grant to fund a pottery wheel and then some sound equipment in their gym. Any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. Weren't those vehicles for the homeless advocates already purchased?
So when they looked at these, we got the grant the end of June. When we went to purchase the vehicles, we looked at the replacement reserve that the police had. There was funding available in there to go ahead and purchase the vehicles. So this will essentially replace that funding that was used. So yes.
Okay, so they're already purchased. So this is kind of to replace the police vehicles.
Well, this will fund specifically those two vehicles. So for grant reporting, we will report that we purchased those two vehicles so that they could get them ordered. We use the replacement fund as the funding source.
Okay. Thanks. Questions for Lisa?
No, but I just want to make a comment. I saw the picture of them and it's super cool vehicle.
The time delay to get vehicles right now is off the charts. We have ambulances, for example, that we have over a year delay of being able to get them made. But we're also finding, so we've been trying to scramble and find funds that we could go and order legally and then come back and backfill. So that's kind of what we're doing with this vehicle.
Your Lambo not come in yet?
Pardon?
I'm just kidding.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If anybody wishes to address the council on this item, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. We've already talked about how I feel and support the Q factor allocation, and I am 100% behind funding these vehicles. And I would like to thank Mark Johnson for being resourceful and being able to find things to be legally attributed so that those vehicles could be purchased until the grant money comes in. I would also like to encourage you as council members, as you move into budget season, which isn't too far away. January is right around the corner and you're going to be budgeting in June. I spend a lot of time on the local homeless coordinating council with Weber County. I also serve on the Weber County Sheriff's Office Reentry Committee. And if we want to stay ahead of this curve that we have with our homeless population and not become Salt Lake City, not become Los Angeles, we need to double down on the work that Anna is doing. And we need to have those interventions happen with all of those pieces that those intervention specialists provide with regards to getting people connected to the resources that we need. We do not have to be Salt Lake City. I don't know if you've driven there recently and seen the challenges that they have with their homeless population. We are at a place that we can do something. And we need to be pulling our part as a city and not just pointing fingers at the county, because Anna's program works. And she has had people who have not had housing and had actual pension funds to be accessed because of legalities within the system of not having a license. So if we want to keep that horse in the barn for Ogden, I strongly encourage you to take a good look at this. Talk to Weber County Sheriff's Office. Laura Andelin is in charge of their reentry program, and be more participatory as to how do we keep people housed and how we make sure that they are re-entered into society so that they have opportunities to pay taxes, buy things here, and be fully functioning citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to address the council on this item? Okay. Seeing no more movement, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Jaberka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Discussion or action on the item?
Chair, I'd make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2022-45.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, seconded by Councilmember Ritchie to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-45. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, reports from the Planning Commission. We'll bring up Barton Brierly. He's our planning manager in CED to discuss the business exchange zone and proposed zone text amendments. How you doing, Barton?
Well, good evening, Chair Nadolski and City Councilors. Good to be here. So this is a request for a change to the zoning standards in the Business Exchange Historic District. And there's only one Business Exchange Historic District in Ogden, and it's this one block in the middle of Stockman Way and Exchange. And the proposal would modify the side and rear yard setbacks required in that zone. It would increase the maximum building height that's allowed. It would allow a reduction of parking, and it would modify certain design standards. And the project, you previously had a good presentation on what the project is, so I won't go into detail, but it involves restoration of the existing stock exchange building, a new addition to the rear and above the stock exchange building, and another building on the site. The building itself would be renovated both inside and outside. And there would be a third floor addition to the existing stock exchange building that is proposed something like this. Here's another view of what would be proposed. Also, the new building would be more than 35 feet, which is the existing maximum height in the zone. So the process this is going through, the Planning Commission looked at this code amendment. They recommended approval of it. This has gone to the Landmarks Commission, who has recommended or given a certificate of historic appropriateness for the addition. It's to you for amending the code, because in order to do this project, it would require some amendments. And then there's the whole land agreement and funding that you've been working on. At the end of all this, the project would have to go through a site plan review. So the only part we're looking at to this particular meeting now is the code amendment. And looking at the purpose of the BEH zone, the purpose was to provide for development surrounding the existing stock exchange building that is in scale with the historic building and architecturally compatible. The general plan goal is, one of the goals is providing economic, zoning, and administrative incentives for rehabilitation of qualifying historic properties. So part of the general plan is looking at how do we save these structures? How do we improve them? How do we give them new life? And it's appropriate in the general plan scheme to look at maybe having different development standards which would incentivize rehabilitation of those properties. So one of the standards in the zone is a 20-foot side and rear yard setback. And it's a little bit odd because the stock exchange building itself does not meet this 20-foot side yard setback, and we created the lines. So I think, and really the side and rear yard setbacks don't serve the same purpose in an industrial zone like this. And so the request was to reduce those to 10 feet so that they could do the addition behind the building and continue with the side yard on the side. You've had discussion about the 35-foot maximum. The purpose has always been to keep the stockyard exchange building as the centerpiece of the Business Exchange Historic District. And the proposed development would really respect that and keep that as the focus. And the addition would be proposed as this glass addition, which is a lighter more airy addition, but would really keep the focus on that as the centerpiece, and actually adding that height would help keep the focus on the Exchange building itself. And one of the requirements would be for additions above 45 feet to be set back. So this would apply, first of all, on the Exchange building, but also the second building which is being proposed, so that you keep a smaller scale towards the street. And then parking, when we looked at parking with the development that's proposed, if you just applied our basic parking ratio, you basically can't do the project and do the parking. You'd end up with just a parking lot, and a building surrounded by parking, which would not be conducive to renovating the building or providing the incentive to the developer to invest in there and to upgrade and preserve the building. So we did feel it was appropriate to look at some way to reduce the parking requirements in there. And what we had proposed and the Planning Commission had agreed to, and the applicant's comfortable with, is requiring they do a specific parking management plan with their tenants. So it could be things like promoting putting bike storage in there, so people are encouraged to bike. It's actually a very good location to bike. Maybe providing bus passes, or doing an employee shuttle, or doing employee ride share, or other things. So the proposal would be they would come to us with, here's how we want to match our parking, here's what we want to do, and that would go to the Planning Commission. They would approve the plan. There'd be provisions in that plan that they could, if there were problems, that people could look at the plan again. It could be reevaluated, because it will need to change over time as new tenants come. And so it would be a living document. But that we felt was an appropriate way to manage parking instead of just paving the whole lot and instead of doing new buildings. And the BEH zone has very specific design standards. And the overall goal stated up top is generally buildings should have a contemporary style, but are encouraged to incorporate design concepts of former stockyard buildings, such as clear story windows and building shapes and materials. So the goal has never been to create another duplicate building, but to carry some of those elements so that it feels like they all fit together as a set. And you can see some of those elements that have been carried on in the new buildings, like the Ogden Zone Distillery has an arched glass window, which is reminiscent of the clear story window in the Stock Exchange building. Just the window patterns and the cornices and the columns and the earth tones. Those are also reflected in the Enable Utah building. And though these are very modern buildings and really fairly industrial type buildings, they do carry over these examples. And I'll say that, looking at what Q Factor is proposing, it'll be just miles ahead of these other buildings. But still, we wanted to carry over those same elements. But there were some things that we did look at. One of the main things was to allow the glass walls on the third floor. When you're going higher, if you allow the glass, like I said, I tried to say airier later or whatever. Also, modifying a little bit the modular bay requirements, allowing cement-based building materials, which would be appropriate as a sort of really solid material in that area. So this comes to you with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve the amendments as I've outlined.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Is the doghouse being restored also?
It's a litter box.
Yes, that is a historic doghouse.
Okay.
It was.
That's an ADU. I hope it's owner occupied.
ADU. I think it's an ADU.
Our office came as Cruella de Vil, and that's where we stored the Dalmatians. So,
I just thought we needed to lighten it up a little. Sorry, folks.
Good. Any other questions for Barton? Okay. Thank you, Martin. Appreciate it.
Public input?
Yep. So we will accept public input on this item. If anybody cares to address the council on this particular proposal, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay. Seeing no movement, we'll entertain action.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2022-44.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Jaburka to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-44. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. Thank you. Okay, Barton, are you back up for the proposed rezone on 7th Street? Yeah. All right. You're looking airier this time. Right? Welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, so this was a proposal to rezone a group of properties on the between 682 and 712 7th Street. The properties are highlighted in blue there, and you can see it's sort of an unusual zoning because it is zoned R16, and the surrounding properties to the east, west, and north are all R3. And there's actually 7 properties here. 3 are owned, the 3 larger ones. Remember to. Oh, no. These 3 are owned by the primary applicant. The other 4 are owned by other property owners who have signed on to the zone change, so it is a joint application between all of them. There are 7 properties, 4 property owners, and 6 single-family homes. There's only 1 lot that doesn't have a single-family home lot. It's this sort of landlocked piece in the back. This is just a street view of the land. And in looking at this, we looked specifically to the general plan to see if this supported the zone change. And the general plan is right on top, strengthen single-family neighborhoods, and the goals are to support and preserve existing single-family nature of the area. And so initially we thought, well, this would not support the zone change. But then we looked at it carefully, and it says multifamily should be limited to existing developed area within the community. And because this is surrounded by multifamily type development, that in fact this is an area that could be considered an existing developed area where multifamily should be. General plan policies call for a definite edge to development. And in this case, by rezoning it to R3, there would be a definite edge to development instead of this sort of odd peninsula. Zoning should reflect the prevailing character of an overall district, which again, in this case, since there's such a large area of R3, it actually would reflect the prevailing character. And general plan policy is that zoning across the street should be the same unless there's a collector or arterial street. In this case, 7th Street's a collector street, so that would be sufficient as a buffer between zones. And illogical boundaries should be redrawn to follow long property lines, and this is a good example of what's sort of an illogical boundary. So it should be rezoned. So based on all those, the Planning Commission did find that it met the general plan policies and did recommend approval of the zone change. At the work session, you asked, well, what is it that you actually get when you get R3? And so I've compiled a list of the uses that are allowed in an R3 zone. The ones on the left are permitted: church, educational institution, library, museum, public building, and public park. I will note that all of those are allowed in R1 except for the library and museum. And on the right side, these would be conditional use: a cemetery, daycare center, private park, public school, bus terminal, and public utility substation, all of which were also allowed in R1 except for a cemetery. And I don't think the applicant's actually proposing a cemetery. There are some institutional housing that would be allowed in the R3, such as a residential facility for elderly persons or persons with disability. And actually, persons with disability would be allowed in the R1 zone. A transitional housing facility, an assisted living facility, a nursing home or retirement home. And really what's most likely is residential uses. And so based on the zoning, I looked at what could be allowed if it was in R3, and the 3 property owners, the 4 lots that are not owned by the primary applicant, the 3 of them have a single family home on them, and that's the most you could get in R3. The one landlocked piece is landlocked, and so it would need to be incorporated with some other property in order to be developed. So the 3 properties that are owned by the primary applicant, if they were done as a multiple family development in the R3, as one apartment building, you could do up to 18 units. Or if you did a group dwelling where you're doing separate buildings, like separate townhomes, the zoning actually allows fewer units if you do it that way. So I just took, if you did like 4 buildings, you could get up to 12 units with 4 buildings. So again, this did come to you with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve the zone change. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Barton. Any questions for Barton? Okay, seeing none, we'll accept public input on this particular proposal. Oh yeah, we actually have the developer and petitioner, Zach Spencer. Are you here? We'd love to hear from you if you have anything you want to add. Yeah, thank you, Bart. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Barton. Good evening, Council. Zach Spencer. I own property in Ogden, but I live in Hooper. And yeah, it's pronounced Hooper. But just some input here. I appreciate your patience collectively. I got a call from Barton saying that my own lack of experience with submitting kind of some plans to the council may have caused a little bit of I guess, left you guys from wanting to know. I don't intend to put a cemetery or a mini golf course there. I think those both might have been permitted. But as a property owner and developer here in the county and in Ogden, I own multiple properties, and one of the great joys that I found is restoring or creating areas and improving the area overall for the citizens and neighborhoods. And felt like one clarification we made, there's a gray brick house that was on one of the slides. Somebody may or may not have been cooking a turkey. Something blew up in there. I don't know what they did, but that house has been torn down. And we worked with Ogden City, and was actually it was really nice to work with the officials of the city to get that done. Went really smoothly. So one of the buildings is already done, but my intention would be to create something that would have some sort of a better community feel than a broken down house, and 2 that are very aged and in need of repair. One of them has been vacant for quite some time and really just brings no real positive value to the neighborhood. It's mostly inhabited by transients and deer, and yes, there are deer back there. And would love to see at the end of the project something that people can live there and be proud of the home that they live in, and bring some value to that community in that area. So, any questions for me?
Chair, I do have a question. You know, I kind of grew up in that area, and so
cool.
They were new when I was young. But even the properties around there that, even though it's zoned R3, they've largely developed as R. You know, they could have been an R2. Is that something you could live with if it was zoned to an R2?
Sure. Some of the, to answer your question, yes. I think some of the limitations that are brought on are some of the zoning requirements and setbacks that change when you change zoning a little bit. Barton had showed a slide with the neighborhood dwelling units. When you go to those, even though I feel like we'd probably create a better overall project, we have some limitations with the code. All of a sudden the setbacks change and grow quite a bit, that where we really can't feasibly fit building that would make sense there in that zone. So that's kind of why we went for the R3, and to not create an isolation or a spot zone. I definitely don't know if we need to push to the maximum density. I think Barton has done a good job of showing what could be there. I don't think that's my intention, is to just say, hey, how many can we fit? How many can we shove in here? But like I said, to have something that would be pleasing to the area and to the surrounding. I've shared my plans with the homeowners that are co-applicants with me, and all have said, yeah, we think that'd be great for the area. I did have some comments from an individual at the commission meeting who had some questions about crosswalks and other things, which I think are notable, but I think this would create value. But yeah, to answer your question, sure, I think that could work. I don't see why I wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, now we can receive public input from anybody who cares to address the council on this item. Bless you.
Salute from Angela.
Salud. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Angel. Mike's yours.
Okay.
My apologies for my
Sorry,
peers.
I'll be quick. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I appreciate how everybody is being careful about going into an R3, because you want to be intentional. As a former planning commissioner, and I know that Commissioner Heyer, Councilmember Heyer has the same background. It's really important that things fit, and I believe that this particular project fits. And I ask you to support it, and I ask you to consider going just a little further. If you remember on the slide that was presented to the right, there was what was allowed versus what would be conditional, and what's on the conditional side is senior homes, senior living, senior groups. And if you've been paying attention to anything that has come out of Chem C. Gardner, we have an aging problem. And one of the challenges that many developers have when they want to work here is that we do not have a form-based code. We're not 100% up to date. There's a huge long process that happens. And I'm encouraging you to move conditional from senior living and senior group home over to allowed for this particular R3. Thinking forward to 10, 15 years from now, when people's grandparents still want to be in Ogden to be with their grandkids but need a place to stay. The key to our housing problem is more faster. And the way that you help things move more faster is to reduce some of the encumbrance that government puts up and stands in the way. And so I urge you to think about senior living. I get it. We don't want a golf course. We don't want these other issues. But I think it would be a good, solid idea to be proactive towards our aging population, to keep grandparents with their kids, and especially for how Mr. Spencer has behaved with engaging the community and getting particular feedback and being a good steward as a developer in a neighborhood. Thank you.
A golf course would be allowed.
Thank you.
Golf wouldn't.
Anybody else care to address the council on this item?
I'm just saying it's allowed.
Okay, we'll entertain action on this item.
Can I
or
just
discussion? Sorry.
ask a quick clarifying question? I know we talked a little about in the work session. So when you were asking if he would go to the R2, how would that be better than a conditional overlay for that area?
Well, this is after listening to him.
Uh-huh.
I think that's probably our best course of action at this point is to go ahead and allow the zone to be changed to R2, and that would give him enough incentive to start working on his project. I think that's kind of what we were told in the work session a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Is it's kind of unrealistic to expect somebody to spend a lot of money on
Right.
plans and et cetera, without some idea if they're going to be able to get approved.
How does that? Oh, I see.
So
Okay, yeah.
the thinking is based on what he said, he thinks he can make that work in an R2, but if he can't, if in the end something is an obstacle, then he could bring a conditional overlay that we could approve with an R3.
I see what you're saying. So he could still, because that was what I was worried about.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about the setbacks were the problem
Right.
with R2.
But that would allow him to do that.
Okay.
That way he knows we are amenable to doing something,
Right.
and then he can kind of move forward. So
Okay.
that would be
Yeah, because I just want to make it work
Yeah.
for whatever he wants to do. 'Cause
I do too.
I want the lot sizes to be smaller if possible.
Yeah.
To make it happen.
And as our resident zoning czar, Councilman Heyer, I agree. I think that's great if we can move it into move it into the R2. Just, do you have any concerns or hesitations about just creating a little pocket that's different? than the
No,
others?
because
Okay.
that's the way the rest of it has already developed.
Okay.
So I think it'll blend right in.
Okay. I mean, I know that was
right next to it, right?
That's what I thought,
Yep.
but I just want to make sure.
That's our hood.
Yeah.
So then
Perfect.
he could also come back with the senior living thing too if he wanted to.
If that's something you want to do.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Just checking.
Barton, any
I forget
anything
the
to add?
process sometimes.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, I mean, you could.
No?
You could change it to an R2.
Thanks. Thanks, Barton.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Barton for communicating to Zach about our concerns with just a blanket rezone and then Zach reaching out to me. I thought, it's obvious that he cares about the community and making something fit in that. And I feel good about the R2. I feel good about doing something it's an area that, it's close to where I live. So I do want to see, good stuff happening there. So, yeah.
Good deal. I think that would allow us to be good partners too and not be bureaucratic and obstacles. So. Okay.
So are you ready for a motion?
Yeah, can we do that tonight?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can. I don't think there's a problem with that, is there? We have to amend this thing first, right?
You should be able just to adopt it as the R2. We'll have to go and update the ordinance, obviously, but typically the way it's considered is because the R2 is a less intense zone than the R3, you should be able to go ahead and
That's what
make that change.
Okay.
But
So,
you
Chair,
okay
I
with
would
that?
make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2022-46, amending the zoning map to reclassify the multifamily residential zone as R-2 property, heretofore classified as single-family residential zone.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie to do all that. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes. Thank you, Zach. Mr. Spencer, nice to meet you. Best of luck in your project. Appreciate your patience and glad we were able to be helpful. Thank you, Rich, for that.
Yeah, I think that's nice that we're able to get this thing handled and he can move on with his project. So.
It really sucks dragging people along, so glad we're not. Okay, comments from the mayor?
I have nothing to add. Thank you very much.
Okay, comments from the council?
Just another quick set of thank you to Brandon Cooper. I met with him last week along with Chris Trimia and Jared Johnson. And I couldn't tell you what a positive interaction and conversation I had with them. It was regarding an issue that has been coming up here, came up in our chambers a couple of weeks ago. And what nice people to work with and professionals. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just going to say, I was the kid on the road trip that was like saying, "Are we there yet?" all the time. And so I'm excited to see what the stock exchange building turns into. And that'll be done tomorrow, right? So I'm excited to, anyway, see how that develops.
I thought you were asking if we're at the adjournment yet. We are. Anyone else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.